In the space of 18 months, I got divorced, lost access to my children, had to sell all my houses, practically bankrupt, and I lost my £25 million business. And my whole purpose had literally been just taken from me in a very, very harsh way. It was a very calculated, premeditated plan to oust me out of the business, and literally just robbed it in broad daylight from me.
Fuck.
Yeah, mate. And it was just like being hit by a fucking wrecking ball, mate. I put my heart and my soul into that business. The way it was done was just brutal. I was 2, my brother was 3 years old. I was handing out the caravan window half naked. He had readied the fridge and was sick everywhere. My mum had left us there all night and abandoned us, took whatever possessions my dad had. So I was fostered for 4 years and never saw my mum again. If a man isn't earning a certain number of pounds, then he's got no chance with women. He's got no chance necessarily with any sort of opportunities. So I think men are judged on what they can provide, not what type of men that they are. I'm going to stay true to myself, man. I'm going to stay my vulnerable, open self. And I honestly believe, play the long game, and I'll get everything I could want. I'm not going to deviate just to fit in with some social construct either.
Chris, what do you do and why do you do it?
2 good questions there. I love the second one even more. I'm a purpose-led business advisor. So what I do is I help recruitment businesses build, scale and grow. That was born out of building my own very successful multi-million pound business, losing it all, coming back, and now advising people how to not only just grow their business, but kind of be the CEO of their life as well.
I like that, CEO of their life. Do you see that quite a lot then? People have built these huge businesses, killing it, but they're not looking after their health, they're not looking after their families, etc.
Yeah, well, that's certainly what happened to me. I'd spend 99.99% of my time on my business. I'd send emails to my team at 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm not advocating this is the right thing to do. And if you ask me anything, it would always be about business. And I think you need to have that drive, you need to have that focus, but you need to have that harmony as well. So I think a lot of my clients come to me to help them grow their business, which I can do. And I love doing the operations, the marketing, the branding, the sales, the hiring, the whole caboodle. But often it's what they're doing and their team doing outside of work in terms of their relationships, their personal development, their health and fitness, their purpose, their general kind of life that has a big impact on what's going on inside of work as well. So actually, whilst the business experience is massively important, it's the life experience as well.
I love that you use the word harmony, because we use that too. And I hate when people say work-life balance, because when I think of balance, I think of a balance beam, and it's, or a tightrope or something like that, but life just isn't that way, is it? It's messy. Things get in the way. There's children, there's illness, there's divorce, there's all sorts of different things that can happen. So when you think of a balance and then it doesn't happen, then people use it as a shitty stick to hit themselves with. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And my business is called Base Mindset, and there's 6 facets in my logo: business, personal development, health and fitness, relationships, wealth and finance. And I think that it's very difficult to get all 6 of those going at the same time. But I think you need to be in tune with, if you need to back away from your business a little bit and do focus on health and fitness and your relationships, do that. But if you've got bad relationships outside of work, you tend to have bad relationships inside of work. So it's all interlinked. And I think that whilst building a business is very important to me and lots of other people, and being money focused is very important to me and other people, if you just focus on that, everything else falls by the wayside, and you might have a good business, but you won't have a good life, and therefore you're not actually achieving anything.
Yeah, what you're actually doing it for. So going into the why do you do it? Why do you do that? Why do you do this element of your business?
Again, it's born out of the experience that I had, where I was doing it initially for the money and the attention is probably the wrong word, but the validation, I'd say, from my parents, from the people around me. I'd want the biggest watch, car, house, office. I got up to sort of 15, 20, 25 million every time I got to these milestones. It didn't really make a dent in my happiness at all. It didn't make me happier or more fulfilled. And when I lost it all, which I'll go into detail about later on, it really made me think about what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. So why I'm doing it now is to have an impact on people's lives is to be a positive influence on the world, to be the best version of myself as well, and to do it because I want to better myself and better others around me, not because of any monetary value. But I believe if I do these things with the right intention, the money comes as well. So I believe in purpose before profit, but I believe in both.
That's exactly it. Because I think that money is a dirty word to a lot of people.
Yeah.
There's a lot of negative connotations. And, I've not read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, but I understand a lot of the work in that. It comes from your parents and the way they viewed it. And either you want to replicate what they had or you want to avoid it like the plague, right? So it's usually what I tend to see. But you did have a difficult start to life, didn't you?
Yeah.
Could you just tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's taken a recent twist as well in the last couple of weeks where I found out I've got a sister. So, which is a big thing that I put on LinkedIn actually. And I'm still taking that in. But I'll explain why I've only just found that out at the age of 47. So I was born into quite a poor family. We lived in a caravan. My dad used to work on the railways at night, all night. He came home one morning after doing a night shift. I was 2, my brother was 3 years old. I was hanging out the caravan window half naked. He had raided the fridge and was sick everywhere. My mum had left us there all night and abandoned us, took whatever possessions my dad had. My dad wasn't physically, mentally, emotionally, psychologically capable of looking after 2 young boys. He wasn't a very affectionate man and was quite a basic and simple man, but just wasn't capable of looking after 2 young boys. So I was fostered for 4 years and never saw my mum again, only when I tracked her down 5 years ago. Since then, I found out loads of stuff about her, like she was the local prostitute and all this kind of stuff. She used to turn a football Fulham flag around to indicate she was open for business whilst me and my brother were in the back. She was to bring her customers in. All these things came out, and I found out I've got other brothers and sisters as well, and loads of stuff came out recently which I'll go into. But so I was then fostered for 4 years, as I said. My dad then took us back into a council flat, and he was still working on the railways, but we had to get up at sort of 5 o'clock in the morning to walk to his work, and then I had to walk to school on my own at the age of 7. So from a very young age I was kind of like forced to stand on my own 2 feet and parent myself and parent everybody else, really. My foster mum said I was the parent of the family even at the age of 5 or 6. So a very difficult kind of upbringing. Our grandparents worked in charity shops, so we used to get all our clothes from charity shops. We used to get bullied and beaten up and all this kind of stuff. Then we moved into a council house, and my dad remarried, and she was a very abusive woman to me. She physically abused me. Used to punch me and beat me up a lot. Used to lock me outside the house in the freezing cold. Wouldn't let me see my friends. She actually had a mental disorder, mental age of about 12. So she wasn't able to sort of really communicate very well. Didn't do any cooking, cleaning, none of the housework. My dad had multiple sclerosis as well. So it was left to me and my brother to kind of do all the stuff. And my friends used to phone up and she used to slam the phone down saying he's doing the fucking chores. All this it was just a horrible kind of existence. So the first 2 female figures in my life, my mum abandoned me and my stepmum abused me. So, you can only imagine what that would do to a young person like myself. It made me very shy, felt very unworthy, felt very different. I used to have a paper round. I used to work in a hardware shop at weekends and in a petrol station at night time to get enough money to kind of find my way out of my parents' house and get my own place. But I often used to, in the last week of secondary school, I didn't complete a full week because I was too shy. I didn't like school at all. I used to forge my dad's notes, get on my bike and try to ride to the railway stations, and even at that age try to kill myself and jump in front of a train. I obviously didn't do that. So it was a really shitty kind of childhood. I know people have had worse, but it wasn't particularly good for me. Wasn't taught how to love, wasn't nurtured by my mum or my dad. Very dysfunctional environment. I mean, the environment I was in with my stepmom was she would eat gâteau, chocolate, crisps, drink Coke, sit in front of the TV and watch cartoons all day. That was her life. My dad used to do the same. And there was no kind of like role model, no kind of like, they say you're a product of your environment. And I mean, my environment was just abuse, neglect, all that kind of stuff. So I then kind of got enough money to get my own place. You know, I was mixing with the wrong crowd, got in some trouble with various sort of drugs and people like that. And, you know, but I was doing all right. You know, I was still quite entrepreneurial. I had a good work ethic, and I eventually joined a business called Computer Futures, which is part of the S3 group. And those in recruitment will know that S3 is one of the biggest recruitment agencies out there. A £1.5 billion business, 4,000 consultants in it across 60 offices in 20 countries. I walked into their office. Ordinarily, you'd think it would be impossible for me to thrive in that environment because the way I was. But I just walked in there and it just felt like, hang on, this is the vehicle for me to get me out of the situation. And I very quickly became the fastest person in Computer Futures to get to 30 contractors. The highest bidder in S3 was billing 600, 700, 800 grand a year across everybody. So to be the biggest bidder in that business was just, you know, I was very proud of that. And I just took to recruitment like a duck to water. I was asked to move to their Bristol office and their London office. I was there for 5 years. And then I met this Irish girl. We got pregnant really quickly, and we broke up after 6 months. Straight after he was born, pretty much. So that was a difficult one because he was then taken away. I had parental alienation with my first child. Didn't see him for a number of years, which kind of killed me really. But my business was going really well. My career was going really well. So I left there, then set up my own business in 2003, and in 9 years got that to 100 people working with us. £25 million turnover, 14 industry awards. 3 Virgin Fast Track 100 awards in a row. Had lunch with Richard Branson 3 times in a row at his house. You know, a Southwest Entrepreneur of the Year. We would have voted the second best company to work for in Europe. It was one of the best, if not the best recruitment businesses of its time. People still say that now. We're absolutely flying. I wanted to grow into different countries, and it was just a brilliant business. But I remember putting my suit on and becoming this different person. So business-wise, I was good, but personally, I wasn't. But anyway, my business partner walked in one day and then said that he didn't want to do it anymore. He wanted to go. So I did a private equity deal with a person that I regret doing it with. Let's put it that way. He's an ex-Dragon. I've been very vocal about this on another podcast. And I had to take that guy to court. It cost me 600 grand. Took me 4 years to get it to the High Court. I was 2 weeks away from it, but I ran out of money. And he knew that. So I did a deal out of court for nothing really, which didn't even cover my costs. So in the space of 18 months, I got divorced, lost access to my children, had to sell all my houses, practically bankrupt, living in Airbnbs, pretty much not homeless, but didn't really have a home. And I lost my £25 million business. And my whole purpose had literally been just taken from me in a very, very harsh way. The way it was done was just brutal, very exposed. So I'd gone from being a very successful CEO and well-known, pretty much a celebrity in my sector, if you want, to being kind of vilified, really, and being kind of like the talk of the sector at that time. And it was really hard to take, as you might imagine. My whole livelihood, career, purpose had just been taken from me. So I couldn't really get out of bed for 3 years. I was depressed and down. And
3 years?
Yeah, it's just kind of like, I just found it difficult to really kind of get myself back on my feet, really. Then I came back onto LinkedIn probably about 4 or 5 years ago now, at least, something like that. I was invited on a webinar, did a talk on vulnerability and leadership, and that went really well. And then I started to be very open on LinkedIn, started to get some traction.
You had one post that went mega viral, didn't you?
Yeah, one post. Well, I think it's one of the most viral posts on LinkedIn. 21 million views.
That's wild.
It had
275,000 reactions,
275,000 likes, 10,000, 11,000 comments, 3,000 reposts, whatever it was. Amazing. I think I gained about 18,000 followers from that one post.
I think a lot of great things are simple, but the way the post was constructed was quite simple. It wasn't like a long-winded story, was it?
Yeah, it's amazing what people like, though, isn't it? And the power of social media. It had 280,000 likes, 10,000 comments, and 2,000 or 3,000 reposts. It was just basically a before and after. You know, before I got divorced, dishevelled, angry, upset, all about my business, and then the picture of me and the picture of health kind of 2 years later, like a before and after picture with a little bit of narrative, and it just went crazy. And I think I gained 18,000 followers from that one post alone. And LinkedIn's been very good for me, as I say, since I've sort of come back on there. I'm up to 73,000 followers. I get 2 or 3 million views a month. I've helped over 60 recruitment businesses build, scale and grow. So that's what I do. I've got my own podcast now. I've been invited on dozens and dozens of podcasts, and I've certainly used my adversity to harness I think, a different version of myself, which I'm very proud of.
There's so many people that, as you were talking about your story then, I was like, holy shit, I need to ask him about that. Holy shit, I need to ask him about that. Because you said, I know there's many children that have had it worse. I think I know a lot more people that have had it a damn sight better, and it's great that you don't have the martyr, woe is me mindset around it. However, there's a lot of trauma there. There's a lot of things that, okay, a lot of people may have had a disinterested parent or even in some cases an abusive parent, but to have experienced all of that in such a short space of time in your formative years, what's some of the work that you've done around that to heal that in a child?
Well, mate, it's been ongoing. I've had a number of different coaches, therapists. I've been in addiction centres as well in the past. But I think it is mainly looking at myself, and I can blame other people, and to an extent, obviously, they played a huge part in this. My mum, my stepmum, blah, blah, there's a long list. But I also believe that looking at myself and taking accountability, even if it isn't my fault in my head, it doesn't matter. Me blaming people and using my energy for resentment isn't going to help me. So instead of that, I kind of harness those feelings of guilt and shame and worthlessness into kind of like investigating those feelings and going really hard on gratitude, going really hard on what my skills are, my strengths are, and instead of keeping that within me, talking about it online, showing my vulnerability, showing my trauma, talking about my trauma, because it's like therapy in itself. My intention is to help others. I'm actually helping myself by doing that. So being publicly talking about it has helped. Things like my diet, exercises, being, all the basics have been really, really important. But I think spending a lot of time on my own, actually, and not needing to be with other people has helped me. I'm a mental health first aid. I've done different courses. I think it's just been a process, mate, of understanding that actually a strong man or a strong person isn't necessarily someone that's aggressive and loud. Mm-hmm. A strong person could be someone who is willing to talk about their emotions. And before I used to be quite kind of embarrassed by that, but now I go the other way. So I think it was sort of almost realizing that I'm a very, very resilient person. So even if you forget the divorce and the parental alienation, even if you forget losing the business, you've still got the abuse from the stepmom, you've still got the abandonment so you got 5 things. So so the fact that my mum abandoned me and then I went on to do that thing at S3, it just shows me that I'm a really, really, strong person. So I think it kind of like, it forced me to feel, and it forced me to realize that actually, I've had so much unwiring to do. No one's ever told me they love me. No one's ever sort of hugged me. No one's ever done any of that kind of stuff. So I've had to learn it myself. So I don't know if that answers your question or not, but it's just been a multitude of different things of just, no one's going to do this for me. As much as I want to be in a relationship and have all these, have a good partner and a family and stuff like that. I've got my beautiful children. They've helped me enormously as well. They've kept me grounded. So just doing the work on myself and not expecting other people to do it for me.
There's a phrase that I love from Mark Manson's book, that it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility.
Yes.
And when I look at the word responsibility, it's ability to respond. Some people choose alcohol, drugs, overeating. I certainly did when I went through adversity, and then I realised actually, no one's going to come save me. Yeah. I've got friends and family, I've got supportive people, but I need to get out of this shit myself. And it is the cliche. It's the little steps, isn't it? That build over time. It's the compound effect.
I think you're right. I think you get tired of doing the same old things, don't you? If you're feeling down, or doing drugs or doing drink or whatever it is, your vices. That doesn't. As you come to realise that doesn't actually solve the problem. In fact, it probably makes it worse. So, I think I love that responsible thing. I think that's really important. And you've always got to look at what you can do to help yourself. But I think it's important to talk about these things. And deep down if you're kidding yourself as well, I think. I think there's a lot of people in this world, and I was one of them, that used to kid themselves and the world into thinking that they are okay, or they're not this or they're not that. And I think, don't lie to yourself, do you know what I mean? You're better off fronting it and being, look, I'm not good at this, I'm fucked up there, or I need help here. That's better than masking it, I think. Too many people mask it.
100%. It's what I refer to as smiling in the light but crying in the dark, and I said to my coach about a year ago when I was going through a certain challenge, I said, I'm just kidding myself, aren't I? He went, no. So, well, I am, because, I'm saying one thing and doing another. He's like, right, and how do you feel about that? It's like, well, I feel like an idiot. I said, so therefore you're not kidding yourself. You can't lie to yourself. You know what you've done. You know that when the proverbial cameras stop rolling and the lights are off and you're sat on the end of your bed, are you genuinely happy? And, with a lot of the content I talk about going alcohol free, people challenge me on it. And I would love to just hook most of these people up to a lie detector test and say, do you honestly want to keep drinking alcohol?
Yeah.
What do you feel it's providing you with? Is this a mask, as you've referred to there? And it's an interesting concept, masking, because again, a different coach of mine said maybe it's not a mask, maybe it's a hat. I was like, fuck, that's genius.
Yeah.
Because I can't act the same way to my father-in-law that I can to my 4-year-old niece. I'm not going to go up to him and go, who's a Gucci goo? It might be a bit weird. Yeah. But if I'm in a serious business meeting, I've got Adam hat on. If I'm with a friend, I've got a different hat on. So I felt like I was incongruent with some of my actions. Is that showing up for you?
That's a really, really good observation. In a different context, as I mentioned briefly earlier, when I put my suit on, I became this sort of stoic, ruthless, decisive person. But deep down, I was someone else. And what I've learned is that I'm now the same in business, in personal. I'm the same person. I am what I am. So if someone asks me how I am, normally I say, yeah, I'm all right. But if I'm not all right, I'll say it. The world of business has changed recently where it is merging into one. But you've got to be yourself online. I think that's probably why I've done quite well on LinkedIn, because I'm literally myself. I'm not trying to put on a facade. I'm not trying to, what the audience think of this. I think that's one of the biggest lessons I've learned, actually. And I've probably got more business and better relationships and more success out of just literally being myself. It should be the easiest thing to do, but it's one of the hardest. But then I've heard a quote saying it's harder not to be yourself. I'm not sure which is more difficult. I think there's so many people in this world that are not really being themselves for fear of being judged or being found out or whatever. And actually, where the money is and where all the joy is and where the peace is actually just letting go, just literally being yourself. And I'm still learning. I'm 47 years old, mate. I've only just done my first public speaking gig a couple of months ago. Up until then, I used to be very scared of what people thought of me. So it's still a process for me. But then I look at myself and go, hang on a second. I'm not using this as an excuse, but I didn't start on the finish line. I think I started not outside the bloody stadium. So I was so far behind everyone else. I'm kind of I feel as if I've achieved so much considering, but I've got so much more to achieve. So, I think life is definitely a marathon, not a sprint as well, Yeah,
that's it. And I think that the guilt and the shame you were referring to earlier as well, it just comes from judgment. And if we replace the judgment with curiosity, it just softens it a bit, because when we judge ourselves, we ask questions like, why? Why am I like this? And, what is wrong with me? And instead, if you replace that with, I'm wondering how I can change. I'm wondering what steps I need to make.
Yeah.
I'm wondering how I can reach out to someone today and maybe ask for a bit of help in this area. It just stops you kicking the shit out of yourself. And a lot of men say to me when I coach them, they'll say, I don't even know who I am. I say, no. You know exactly who you are, but you don't feel confident enough to be who you want to be because you're fearful. And I think that the two biggest fears that we have, being born are loud noises and heights. And over time, the two biggest fears we develop are not being worthy and loss of love.
Right.
Do you think those two were at play with you because of the things that happened in the past?
Well, there's loads of examples of that. Pretty much when I was born, my mum abandoning me was the loss of love, and it made me feel not worthy. And I've carried, I think I've psychologically or subconsciously both carried that through the whole of my life, and kind of had to kind of put on a mask and had to not let that affect me. And I think eventually it got to a point in my business where it all came crashing down for various different reasons. I was forced to feel. And I think the feelings of guilt and shame and unworthiness that you've mentioned before, it's going to sound quite strange, but they're not necessarily bad feelings. At least you're feeling something. As you rightly say, it's about being curious. And so instead of like trying to dismiss it with something else, like watching TV, going on a run or drink or whatever, if I do feel a little bit wonky, which is much less than what it used to be, I still get it now and again, I'm like, oh, right, so what's this telling me? What's this trying to teach me? It's often a thing saying, Chris, there's something you need to work on. And it's a good side. I almost say, don't get me wrong, I don't look for these things, but when they do happen, I'm like, oh, okay, what does this mean? As opposed to, oh God, it's kind of like, because I personally don't feel as if they'll ever go away. As you say, like you can be skipping along, everything has been going rosy, and something out of the blue can happen to you. And sometimes mental health comes in when you just don't know. And I just think instead of being scared of it, it's kind of like, I think half the battle is acknowledging how you're feeling. Once you've acknowledged that, then it kind of like it is manageable. A
framework that I love. Have you heard the proverb about the Chinese farmer and the horse? Have you heard of that before?
Oh yeah. So a bad thing happens, but it could be a good thing, kind of thing.
Yeah. The farmer gets the horse. Everyone says, "What great luck!" Maybe, maybe not. The horse runs away. What bad luck? Maybe, maybe not. It comes back with 5 more horses. What great luck? Maybe, maybe not. Sun goes on. The horse falls off, breaks his leg. Oh, what bad luck? Maybe, maybe not. The army come to town in a few days. Oh, we're recruiting. We can't take my son because he's broken his leg. What great luck? Maybe, maybe not. And it's such a great framework that I think Joe Public, I don't mean that disrespectfully, but if you were to ask a random person on the street, is this a bad event? Everyone just say yes, as opposed to going, maybe.
Oh, totally.
And it's challenging that thought and doing it intentionally and doing it intellectually without the judgment again.
That's a lot of wisdom you're showing there. And I've learned that hugely around, at the time, losing my business, for example, felt the worst thing that could ever happen to me. But actually, I wouldn't wish it on anybody. I wouldn't want it to happen to me again. But there's so many positives that have come out of that. I've built a different business that I feel is much more fulfilling. I'm a completely different person now. So I may well have continued in that business and been a multi-millionaire and been all these kind of things, but probably would have been a bit of an arsehole probably, because I think back then I probably was a bit of a twat, a bit of a jack the lad and all that kind of stuff. So it kind of like, I do think things happen to you, for you, or it's how you deem it actually. They can happen to you if you deem it that way, or for you. So generally, mate, I've got arms and legs. It's going to sound, I've got a house, I've got 2 beautiful kids, I've got a business, I'm healthy. I mean, there's so much, we live in a country that's like relatively okay compared to others. We've got to look at these things and go, mate, we've got an opportunity, it's never too late, all that kind of stuff. So I feel that most things don't affect me now. What does affect me actually is people being disingenuous, people trying to rip me or other people off, or people just being, overly vicious or unfair on people. I can handle kind of things happening to me that are, like big things and, trauma and mental health, all that kind of stuff. But I just don't like people going out their way to be unfair on people. That affects me a lot. I don't know why, but I think as you get older and a bit wiser, you just, one of the things I think Robert De Niro said it, this too shall pass. I say it pretty much on every podcast I do. I think that it's a Carl Jung, he's a very, very good philosopher. He came up with this thing where life is like an American football field where you've got 2 end zones. One end zone is when you're absolutely flying, you're at the top of your game, you've got relationships, money, you're flying. And the other end of the field is the depression, the darkness. And you don't actually want to be in either of those for too long, because when you're flying high, you bet your bottom dollar something's going to happen. And when you're in the thing, this too shall pass, So kind of like, I'm not saying don't get excited but I think try and keep a middle ground on everything. It's not easy to do.
No, it's a Stoic philosophy, like you said. It's the looking out for what it is, But what a lot of people do is they look at it for worse than it is.
Yeah.
And then, but eventually you have to look at it for better than it is. So if you're overweight, people they look at it for what it is and they go, okay, yeah, I'm overweight. Now you've got two choices. Better than it is, I'm going to go to the gym. Worse than it is, I'm a fat loser and I'm never going to be able to change. And the way that you communicate to yourself will determine your outcomes ultimately. But I think that that also stems from a lot of the past and a lot of the belief that you say to yourself. How did you sort of break free from what a lot of people could have fallen into victimhood? How did you break free from that disassociation of rejection? I mean, you got into recruitment, so that's pretty good handling rejection.
That's true.
But to get rejected at such a young age over and over again, how did you develop the skill to disassociate your worth from the rejection?
Well, I think I'm 47 now. I think it's only been recently I managed to achieve that. Because even on LinkedIn, right, I used to post for the likes. I admit that. Now I post with intention to add value. So in terms of disassociating my worth with that, I think it's just been a process. I think I used to attract the wrong women because I didn't feel as if I was worthy. And I think there hasn't been one specific thing, I don't think. I think it's just been a combination of, I've had a lot of people shit on me. A lot of people take advantage of me. A lot of people see my vulnerability, my weakness, and my inability to set boundaries, my inability to make good decisions. But I think because I've learned how not to do it, how not to be parented, how not to treat people, which is sound quite bizarre. It's the antithesis of what I wanted to be. So I now parent my children. I think I'm a really good dad. I'm attentive. I'm there. I'm present, and I had none of that. So I guess feeling the wrong end of that stick has made me realise I want the complete opposite of that. That makes sense.
I had that throughout my career in a very different way. I learned way more from leaders that were terrible than I ever did from those that were inspiring, because it's the old adage, isn't it? That you won't remember what people said. You won't always remember how they said it, but you'll always remember how it made you feel. Yeah. And we have a very distorted memory, and we misremember things. And and then I said this to him, and then she said this to me, and it was 30 years ago. How do you possibly remember that? But what I'm hearing is there's pain there still. There's suffering. You're reliving it because you're opening up the old wound again and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think I look back to some of my content on LinkedIn. You know, for the first 3 years, a lot of it was talking about my past and my history and all this kind of stuff. And I think I just needed to talk about it. I'm at a stage now where I'm talking about it a lot less. I'm still talking about it. It's still my story, but my story isn't my life. It's a chapter of my story. Whereas before, I think it became me. And I think what I've learned across this journey is that anyone who's got trauma, I'm not here to diminish it or dismiss it. But at some point in your life, you have to accept it, process it, and try to move on and create a new chapter. Because I personally feel if you're forever talking about that, it kind of becomes you, and it can actually slow you down. So I kind of use it as a way of creating relationships, and I think it's a good thing to talk about. But I don't see that as me now. I almost see I actually honestly feel I'm a completely different man now to what I was then, and I think it's really important that you take as much time as you need to process your trauma, but you've got to look forward.
Do you remember Clubhouse, the app?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
There was a guy on there who was a double amputee. And every time we'd go into one of the chat rooms on Clubhouse, and his story was horrific, but he'd reel it off so quickly that it not only became how people viewed him, but also it lost all its meaning. So he's just like, yes, when I was growing up, I was physically abused by my uncle, and then my mum tried to set fire to me, and then I lost both legs in a car accident, and then da-da-da-da. Wow. So I spoke to him a little bit about it. I said, mate, you could be a speaker, because the story's so impactful. But if you just slow down a little bit, not to try be disingenuous and not to try lay it on thick, but you're going through the emotions so quickly, and we're losing the power of what the essence of what
I really relate to that, and I think I was guilty of that, because I think in his head he's probably thinking, oh, I've done it enough times, people don't really care, but it's kind of like diminishing his own story. But it's not about that. It's about, I think, telling the story in the right way, but then using it, the intention is to help people and help others, isn't it? So that story that he's gone through, which obviously is absolutely horrific, there's power in that story.
There is. So if you're comfortable, going back to the moments where you said the physical abuse that you received and the atrocities that you're exposed to from your stepmother and, you know, emotionally absent father and what have you. Obviously, you won't remember verbatim what was said, but how were you feeling about yourself in those moments as you revert back to little Chris?
Well, I can't necessarily remember too much about my mum, because I was very young, but my stepmom I can remember a lot. You know, if I used to take anything out of the fridge for food, she used to accuse me, slap me around the head. Oh, he's done it again. My dad was called Dennis. He's done it again, Denny. He's fucking taking stuff out. He's eating food. All this kind of like, I couldn't even eat properly. She just used to kind of like stifle my voice. Shut up. You know, I just felt like I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't be myself. And she just almost treated me like a bit of a sort of a house slave around. We had this stair carpet, and it was always covered in dust. It was a council house. It wasn't a very good house. And we just had to wipe it or sweep it with this brush. I'd do that again and again and again. I just felt like I was so subservient to her, that I felt very controlled. I felt very small. I felt very just like a child that wanted to break free, and I couldn't engage with her at all. So, if you was to ask me what I would say to Chris back then, I'd say, Chris, I love you, Chris. I've done these kind of things before in counselling, where I put myself in that position. I've kind of now parent myself, and I do believe we need to parent ourselves, even whatever age we are, need to parent our younger version of ourselves. So now I talk to that version of Chris, and I'm the parent to my own self, if that makes sense. And because I never had that, so it kind of just made me feel like I had to literally manage, coach, parent, counsel myself as a 8-year-old, you know, and I was so shy. You know, there was English literature at school, and we used to read out books, and I used to always skive off, and then I was asked to do it, and I got read, and I ran out the school, and I think that's really affected my ability to kind of like speak in public. And people should say to me, mate, you've got to get on stage, you've got to do some TEDx stuff and all that kind of stuff. And it's only now, literally this year, where I feel as if I'm probably ready to do that, because I'm still affected by it. So if you think I had decades of that, I don't think it's as easy to go. You can just, I think you've got to, in the moment you think you're ready, you're not. In the moment you think you know everything, you know nothing. So I think work, growth, personal development, it's an ongoing, not battle, it's an ongoing thing that, you know, you're never out the woods, and you got to keep yourself focused on improvement and being better, minimizing the negative talk. Obviously, on my phone I've got all my values, courage and discipline, so I see them every day. In my office I've got all my values there. People talk about affirmations, people talk about visualization, people talk about manifestation, and I think some of the art of that is saying no, actually, and removing things that aren't good for you, so you can create space for things that are. The amount of people even close friends I've not walked away from, but disassociated myself with. You know, my content on my Instagram is only about coaching, development. I'm absorbing all that kind of stuff, and I think you can, in that essence, create your own destiny. You can rewire yourself. So no matter what's happened to you, to an extent, I still think you've got an opportunity to go, what content do I want to absorb? What people do I want to be around? You know, so don't be the smartest person in the room. Challenge yourself. I've got 2 other coaches now. I'm part of some big multi-millionaire WhatsApp groups that I'm a small fish in, but I'm learning. And obviously with my stuff, I'm teaching a lot of CEOs as well. So I think who coaches the coach, who leads the leader? You know, you've got to.
There's one at the top, right?
Yeah.
Holy grail of coaching.
Yeah.
Charging you for a course that's probably got a 7 in it. Yeah, I think that affirmation, manifestation, visualization without action are just mental masturbation.
Absolutely.
I think that it's the affirmations, when said about something that you don't believe, is only going to impact your self-esteem in a negative way. So
it's true.
When I say to people, if you do practice affirmations, make sure it's about something you believe. And they're like, well, like what? What do you actually love about yourself, really love about yourself? If you had to pick 3 things, gun to your head, you have to tell me 3. I guess I'm a good mum, I work hard, and I'm a nice person. Great. There you know, your affirmations every day.
Yeah.
As opposed to, I'm beautiful, I'm amazing, if you don't think you're beautiful and amazing.
Yeah, but I think you're right though, but it's the action that says it all really. So like the times when I get down or a little bit depressed are the times when I'm not actually doing stuff. I'm not saying I'm one of these workaholics because I've learned not to be, but I think that if I'm making incremental gains and doing something that's gonna, we've all got to-do lists, all got things to do. I think taking action, even if it's small, it's kind of like psychologically, that's a little achievement. It's good for your purpose, good for you. So we can all talk a good game. We can all do that. And I coach people on on recruitment, and the amount of recruitment companies saying to me, "Oh, we're struggling with our BD, business development," but they're not actually being proactive about it. They're waiting for the phone to ring. It's like, well, can I make it any more simple? Get on the fucking phone, kind of thing. You got to do it.
Yeah, we do it when we're coaching other coaches on their businesses. How many cold DMs have you sent today? Oh, 3. Right. Well, maybe send 100.
Yeah.
And then you might start get some leeway, because there's no such thing as a lack of leads. Or like you've just said, pick up the phone.
Yeah.
And if you're unsure, type in good cold callers.
Yeah.
Because we don't lack resources. We lack resourcefulness.
Yeah.
There's so many. If you could type anything into ChatGPT, almost anything into YouTube, Google, it's going to spit it back out.
If you say you're going to do something and you actually do that, even if it's a small thing, the more times you keep doing that, it's like a muscle. And you keep doing bigger things and the more times you don't, it works in reverse. So maybe even start small. If you say you're going to go for a walk, then build it up to a run. If you say you're going to make 5 calls, then make 6. It all self-perpetuates. And I think this is what it goes back to, kind of like, I'm a business coach as well, but I think half the battle is in the mind and half the battle is in what we're telling ourselves and, what we're committing to or not committed to individually. So I think where confidence falls down is that when we lie to ourselves, we don't fulfill our own promises to ourselves.
Yeah, and I refer to it as self-esteem points. You can either gain 3 points there, you can lose 3 points. And, it's that mini dopamine contract though, isn't it? We get so excited about the future, it means we don't have to take action now. So it's just delayed dopamine. So I go, right, that's it. Gym tomorrow. No more fucking takeaways, no more drinking, starts tomorrow, or it's Wednesday, Monday, definitely going to happen on Monday. And like, what if I ripped up your calendar?
Yeah.
Then what would happen?
That's what I think. And people have these big 3-5 year grandiose plans, and that's all well and good. But I find the furthest I take, I do that with my businesses, but the furthest I take them is probably 90 days to 3 months. Then we break it down to a week, then we break it down to a day, and we have different facets. And I think if you've got these big goals, it's great, but they're so far ahead. It's just like you can't really measure the progress, can you? So I think breaking it down is really important.
Yeah, if you want to become an actor, don't think Oscars. Think reaching out to a local agent. Think, maybe trying to get an audition. Maybe go to a local acting class. Because the goal, the Oscar, is always great to attain. Don't get me wrong, and I'll never limit anybody. And I say this to people very directly, but you can have anything you want, but you can't have everything all at once.
Also, as well, what you tend to find is that along that journey to become an Oscar-winning actor, halfway through it, you probably want to change. You might change your mind anyway. It might be something completely different. But the dreams are important, but you got to press the forward button, haven't you?
Yeah, it's that when and then mindset, isn't it? It's the when I achieve this, then I'm going to be.
Yes,
and it's like, well, you can be that now. You can be happy or content with where you're at, but I don't want you to stop progressing. But do we have to put our worth in a figure of what we earned. We need to put our worth in a number on the scale.
Yeah.
We need to put our worth in a PB at the gym because no one cares. The least interesting thing about anybody is how much they weigh. And after that, it's what they earn, and et cetera, et cetera. So I want to go back to that story because we kind of brushed over it at the beginning around setting up the business. Some of the challenges there, because we do get a lot of business owners that do listen to this podcast.
Yeah.
What were the daily challenges mentally? Because I know for the most part, running a business is fucking hard, but what was showing up for you as you were trying to grow it?
Well, I think I had this inherent, literally insatiable desire to just smash it out of the park. So I think because what my mum did to me, it forced me to stand on my own 2 feet. I smashed in S3. I did all those things for 5 years, set up the business. I think I'd already won the battle. What I mean by that is because my mindset and my focus was like, let's just go. I had no fear. That helped me no end. But in terms of the challenges, we started out as me and my business partner Pete. We were both doing everything. So then we decided what our strengths are. My strengths were sales and driving the team forward. His were more operations. So we sort of separated it out. I think the challenges were. If we had enough money to buy or hire 5 people, I'd say let's hire 15. But he would say let's hire 3. So we had 2 completely different opinions. And I think on one hand it was good to have 2 of us. On the other hand, we kind of had difference of opinions. But I think it was probably hiring the right people. So we got to a certain sort of 30 or 40 people in Bristol. We wanted to open up London, and we went through 3 different managers, and they all failed. And then we decided eventually to move one of the guys from Bristol down to London. That really, really helped. So I think the challenges were hiring good people, but we cracked that in the end. I don't know. I think because we set up the business with so much process, so much of the right messaging. I guess the challenge was our ability to, or my ability to manage that big of a machine. 80, 90, 100 people. I was a millionaire at 27, 28. It probably was too much for me too soon. I like going out. I like doing drink. I was mingling and socializing with a team. So I think my challenge was, if I had my time again, I would be a bit more disassociated with that and just lead the business. And I think where I went wrong was kind of the managing the difference between being the leader and down with the kids. So I think that I got involved in things I shouldn't have got involved in, and because I guess I was still searching for that validation and that worthiness from what happened to me, even though, God, multiple awards, millionaire, offices, houses, cars, watches, everything. But I still wanted that validation from my team, I think, as well. And
loved.
To be loved, yeah. And I think that was a little bit of my downfall.
What I find so interesting about your story in particular is you didn't really have any role model to look to as a kid. And you worked your ass off and you got that work ethic almost just because, right? There's a whole nurture versus nature thing, right? But then you've attained it, but then you don't have the perhaps parental support or the senior figure that you need in that moment now to help keep you centered.
Yeah.
So it's got you to the point, but it's not there after when you've arrived.
I think you're only as good as the people around you. I think it was almost inevitable that something would happen. I think even the private equity vehicle people that came in, they could probably see it a mile off. On one hand, they could see that my brilliance without being big-headed, my ability to drive and build businesses and scale, that's amazing. But they also could see my naivety and my vulnerability and how susceptible I was to certain things. And I think they preyed on that, as many other people did as well. So and this is why now I've got coaches around me, I've got good people around me, and I choose my friends and my associates really, really wisely. And I think that if I'm advising people on how to build new businesses, I'd say you have half a dozen people that are excellent and that have got the right attitude and mindset and capability, as opposed to trying to get 50 people in that are average. And so I think there's a lot to be said for that. But I wouldn't change any, honestly, I wouldn't, it's made me who I am today. And I feel very fortunate to have been in that position. But you're right, mate. I was lonely, mate. I had no one. I'd go home and kind of like feel quite distraught and quite lonely, even though I had all these. The perception was I was effectively King Kong of my own realm. I was bereft of any sort of substance, really, I think.
Yeah, I've got a friend who's very successful. He's probably early 30s now, owns a very successful gym brand, but I don't want to mention the name. People can make of it what they will, but he owns a very successful gym brand. Lives in a mansion in York. He's got a lake in the front garden, the works, right?
Wow.
But I went on a stag do with him a few years ago, and he said I sleep in the smallest room in the house. He's like, I've just never felt more empty.
Seriously, yeah.
Yeah, and
I relate to that.
He'd achieved such a great level of success, and he then was like, who can I trust? Who can't I trust? Who is out to get something from me? And he had no problem attracting women because he's a good looking guy, really confident, successful, but he pushed people away, kept them at an arm's length, almost not feeling deserving of it in a sense, but also not trusting it. So when you were chasing the validation, chasing the love from your team, et cetera, obviously that was trying to fill the void. At what point in your life did you realise that I am worthy of love and I do deserve this?
I would say fairly soon after my divorce, when I had time on my own to literally finally just stop, sit, feel. At that point, though, I was financially broken, mentally, physically, emotionally broken. I was just in the most darkest place I could ever be in. But on one hand, it was almost like it was one of my biggest rock bottoms, if not the biggest rock bottom. But I could finally see almost like, I can only go up from here. So I started to just do some work on myself, and there wasn't any distractions. I was in control. I didn't have any business to run. I didn't have a marriage to look after. I didn't have, obviously my kids came back as well eventually, but I felt as if it was like day one of my life. You know, I've had all these traumas, all these big things happen to me. It's almost like, well, nothing else bad, whatever else can happen, it can't be as bad as what. So it kind of like, I started to kind of like do some stuff on LinkedIn and realise, hang on a second, mate, you were S3's worldwide top biller. You built a £25 million business. You've got 2 beautiful children. You know, everything you've done, you've knocked out the park, irrespective of those massive hurdles that you've climbed. And I just started to kind of like tell myself, and it's just a process. So I think when I had that time on my own and doing that, this was about 5 or 6 years ago. But I do think that every single month that's gone past, I've gained in my confidence, in my self-worth, and I'm still. I'll be very interested to see what I'm like in a couple of years' time, because I still feel as if I haven't had the rough end of the stick. Well, I have, but I still feel as if it was a level playing field for me, where the hell would I be now? It's quite scary to think that. So if I can continue in the same vein and have an eventless life moving forward, the world is literally my oyster.
That's it. I think that your ability to withstand pain and overcome adversity is exactly why you are where you are. And, you know, when I went through my challenges, the phrase I used was not in a self-defeating way. It was like it was actually quite uplifting. It was just, sure, like something else happens. You're like, another family member died. Sure. You know? Oh, girlfriend wants to leave now. Okay, sure. It was just like that for me, because I knew that it couldn't get much worse. I mean, obviously everything can, but I think I had my fair share in a very short space of time. But as you said there earlier, it builds an emotional muscle that you didn't really know was possible, or, even capable of building, I guess. Because when you are going through this shit, you feel like, when's this ever going to end? Yeah,
and then I'm now at a stage now where I don't like to judge people. It's one of my values not to judge anybody, but I observe, let's put it that way. Probably that's a different way of saying judging, but I look at people now and I think, actually, everyone's fucked up, for want of a better term. But I don't think the majority of the people I meet, without being too disingenuous, could have or would have maybe coped as well as I did. Then I look at me and I think there's a lot of broken people out there that are functioning addicts or functioning whatever they are. And people reveal themselves as well. And what I'm trying to say here, probably quite badly, is that I now honestly believe I'm awesome. And I love myself. I don't mean that in any other way other than that's how I feel about myself. And I've only had that in the last few months, year, but not in an arrogant way. And and it's like when you get to that stage, it's like, right, I can do most things. I don't put people on pedestals as much now. I used to think, I can't possibly say that to somebody. I think we're all the same, really. And some people get to places in different ways. But I'm going to stay true to myself, man. I'm going to stay my vulnerable, open self. And I honestly believe, play the long game, and I'll get everything I could want. I'm not going to deviate just to fit in with some social construct either.
A phrase I heard ages ago is really childish, but it's quite fun. It's just "we all poo," and it just humanises us to the nth degree, because the person that said that was a public speaker that I'm quite close to. I met him on Clubhouse actually as well back in the day. And he said, never ever put anyone on a pedestal. If I got a knife and cut you, you're going to bleed. So, it's okay to admire things in people, but don't go the other way and don't judge, as you've said there. And that nuance there is so different. When you said, is it different to judge and is it different to observe? I think it is, because a lot of the time judgment is outward. Yeah, and observing is inward. So if I see an attractive girl, for example, and I inwardly say she's really hot, that's different if I go up to her and go, hey, do you want for a drink? See, that brings it to life, right?
You talk about girls, let's get a little bit controversial. I mean, I used to go for girls' looks, and obviously looks are really important, but I feel as if you attract what you are. A leader is a reflection of the team, all that kind of, and I feel as if that one of the things that's missing in my life is a partner. And I've always said up until recently, you don't need anyone to make you happy. But up until recently, that's changed. I feel as if I've reached a point of kind of self-actualization where I'm happy in myself now. But I do believe that finding someone to be a co-pilot will transform me to another level of that. Which is contradictory, but I feel as if what I used to do was essentially go for the first person that would show any kind of attention to me, irrespective of many things. But now I'm very, very selective about that. I'm quite picky. Maybe I'm too picky, I don't know. But I feel as if I'm a very, very good catch. And I mean that in a way of, I feel as if I can offer somebody my real heart and my real kind of soul and my real kind of purpose. And I feel it's not easy to find that reciprocated either, is it? I don't think.
No. And I think that it does remind me a lot of my late teen years, early 20s, where I didn't necessarily have trouble attracting girls, but I'd scare them off within a month because I had such low self-esteem, even though everyone would say different things, and to the contrary of that, but I just wouldn't believe it. So anytime someone gave me a compliment, I'd deflect it. Oh, you're looking good, mate. Oh, I know, and I'd try correct them on what they've said. I wouldn't necessarily have an issue with when women were coming to me, talking to me, but once I started seeing them and going on dates and whatever, I'd almost chase them away because I was either too overeager or so the other way of disinterested because I didn't feel worthy of the outcome.
It's a difficult one. How have you evolved that into not doing that then?
I'm partnered now for 6 years with my girlfriend, and the last breakup I went through was pretty, I don't like using the word traumatic loosely. I guess it was almost like a trauma response though, because we had a bit of an argument. And she said, I'm going to go stay with some friends. I said, cool, no problem. And I remember driving into the estate, and it was like a new build estate, so you could see the entrance point, and I was like, why is the car just stopping? She wasn't driving either. I was like, what's going on? They were just sat there for 20 minutes. I'm in my Sunday best. I'd got her flowers. I thought, we're going to rectify this. It's going to be fine. We're going to kiss some makeup. And she just walked in and just said, look, it's over.
Wow.
I need to go. I love you. I'm sorry, but I can't do this anymore. And she was out the door in about 2 minutes, and I literally had a panic attack. I fell to my knees and I just couldn't breathe because the sensation was like a stabbing pain. And, I had undiagnosed ADHD, which is connected to RSD, rejection, sensitivity dysphoria. So that I felt like this overwhelming fear of abandonment as well. And I remember I just hit the deck almost straight away. and that panic and that overwhelm. And then I did a lot of work on this with a therapist, and I was healing that little Adam, that younger Adam. And I think this is the case for a lot of people with any challenge that they've got. You have to go back to the younger you to understand where the pain began. And I think it was the insecurity from a young age. It was not feeling good enough at school and needing validation. And any time a girl showed me attention, it would validate me, etc. So that really helped cure it, going back to the younger version of me. But the best thing I did was analysis, honest, data-led analysis, which might sound quite business heavy, but it's not, around what was I actually doing? What was the relationship actually like?
Yeah.
Because the more work I've done on myself, I've gone, if I was her, I'd probably break up with me too, because it was just ambivalence
I see.
towards the end. We weren't fighting. We never fought, but it would just be like, we brush it under the carpet, suppressed emotion, not having sex, not going out on date nights. So
actually, you wasn't right for her and she wasn't right for you. And in the cold light of day, or something wasn't working, something wasn't connecting. But because we're so sort of almost, if I'm not with her, my life's going to end kind of mentality, we cling on to these things, don't we? And that's a self-worth thing.
It is, mate, 100%. And I think that was the main problem for me, was that, again, didn't feel worthy of love. Kept my distance from her. She didn't understand why I was going cold. She ended it. I was like, oh my God, how could she possibly do this to me? When in reality, I know exactly why she did it now. So I'd encourage, maybe for you, maybe for anyone else that is looking to do that, is look at the relationships that have happened and gone,
what role did I play?
Correct. And also, where did it start to go wrong? Not at the end and it was shit. What was the lead up to it? Oh yeah, I stopped looking after myself. I stopped doing that. And men's perception, a lot of the men that I coach, their perception is of what women want is 6 figures, 6 foot, 6 inches kind of vibe, right? In reality, they want a man that's got their shit together.
Of course, mentally, emotionally as well, not just financially.
You don't have to look like Brad Pitt, but you just need to have something about you. And it doesn't have to be a Ferrari. It can be, yes, it can be a nice car, whatever, but it's, are you value-led? Are you family-orientated? Are you focused on a business or your career? How do you treat others? Do you judge yourself too harshly? Do you judge other people harshly? Are you compassionate? Are you kind, etc.?
Well, I think that's right. I think it's absolutely correct. But also I think that you're worthy enough to want these kind of things in your woman as well. And I think that the real answer is that, you might have all those attributes as well, but you still shouldn't settle for anything less for that on the other side. And I think you can get guilty of I have been guilty of doing that as well. And I think that I've had my heart broken many a time, actually. I've probably broken a couple of hearts as well. But, I think it was only last year I was dating this girl, and it finished after about 6 months. And I was in absolute bits about it. I look back now and think probably that was the best thing that can happen to me, because like you, it made me look at myself and go, well, actually, I probably did encourage some of that behaviour. I probably did enable some of that behaviour because I was too weak or soft or whatever. And I kind of like, it's not easy at the time, but I think sometimes the only way to do it is I think the only way to heal is, even if it is the other person's fault in your eyes, you've got to look at what role you played in that.
A lot of women want men to show their emotion, but in actual fact they don't, because after a while the man can become somewhat aggressive. I don't mean physically or emotionally abusive or what have you, but it might be like, I don't want to fucking talk about it. And it's like, oh shit, like, where did that come from? But a lot of the men won't say anything because they have these unhealed past. They have unhealed past because they had emotionally or physically absent fathers or mothers, or abusive mothers or fathers, and it hasn't healed. You can't talk that frequently as men because you get judged or fixed. So you have these, and I don't mean this disrespectfully to anybody, by the way, because I was certainly in this position myself. You have these 30-plus-year-old men that are, you have the 7-year-old boy in a 30-man-year-old body.
That's why there's so many male suicides, because sometimes you can't win. If you're too kind of alpha male, then you're criticised, and if you're too kind of like showing of your feminine energy, then you're criticised. But it goes back to be yourself, and if people don't like that, they're the wrong people for you.
Yeah, 100%.
That's what you've got to do.
I say to men all the time, like, anyone in relationships, that silent demands never get met. So if you want them to do more or less of something and you don't communicate that and then they don't change, then you become frustrated. It's actually on you because you've not told them.
I think a healthy relationship is you're allowed to give the person feedback and also receive feedback. If I'm doing something that isn't helpful or conducive to a relationship, I want to know that. If you tell me in the right way, I can learn and grow, and vice versa. It's when it's like I can't do that for fear of pissing her off, then that's a red flag you need to address. I think communication is so important, isn't it, in relationships, right?
100%, mate. So I really want to dive into the story about the business and how the exit came about.
Yeah, right.
Because I was going to say something, but I'm not sure if it's correct, so I'll just ask you.
Yeah.
Were you on holiday or something at the time? Yeah.
So I just got married, and we were in the Maldives, me and my wife at the time, on our honeymoon, and I received an email and a phone call from this person. He's a very, very high-profile person saying...
This is the ex-Dragon's Den person.
You're saying that you're suspended from your business on 3 gross misconduct charges. You're not allowed to speak to any of your team. If you do, you're in breach of the process and it could affect your thing. Come into my office on Monday. This was on a Thursday or Friday, so I was flying back. And we're going to hear your case in the boardroom. And I couldn't access my emails. I couldn't make any phone calls. In that 2-week time I was on holiday, they've interviewed all my team, and they've concocted all these things and made people think they're going to get my job. And honestly, it was a very calculated, premeditated plan to oust me out of the business. So you can imagine what that was like, flying back. And then I came back and had the meeting, and it was from there, it was very, very clear that they were trying to get me on as many different things as possible. And there was a clause in the shareholders agreement that enabled them, if I was deemed as a bad leaver, which they deemed me as, I would have to sacrifice my shares at a nominal value or whatever it was. It was a long story there. So, and it transpired that this guy's done this to dozens of other people. I know one guy he's done it to who's actually had a tragic end, let's put it that way, to his life. And it's well known that that's the way that person has operated in the past. And
just to collect all the money themselves and the shares themselves.
Because the business, right, was 75% contract. What I mean by that is that it had ongoing recurring revenue for years and years and years. Although it had £2 million profit, so the business was worth 20 odd million quid anyway for someone to buy it. It wasn't just the assets of the business, it was the ongoing revenue. So he got the business for effectively nothing, and then asset stripped for 2, 3, 4 years, probably earning 3, 4, 5 million quid a year from that anyway, and then just merged it into one of his businesses and literally just robbed it in broad daylight from me.
Fuck.
Yeah, mate. And it was just like being hit by a fucking wrecking ball, mate. I put my heart and my soul into that business, and the whole industry was talking about it, but it was done in such a way that it was deep. Everyone felt I was this kind of disingenuous thing and all this kind of stuff, and everyone kind of turned against me. And when they found out the truth, everyone was like, "Oh right, okay, sorry, mate, we didn't realise." And I didn't even have my own staff turning against me and all this kind of stuff. And I did play a part in it. I'm not going to say that I wasn't innocent, because I was guilty of things that I shouldn't have done. But under no circumstances did I deserve to lose my business in that way. And it was just, mate, it was horrific to lose that business like that. And the way they done it, they didn't care. He didn't care. And I look back to some of the meetings I had with them where they were trying to get information from me. That it was all this was planned. And I just look back and I just think, how did I survive that? How did I come back not resentful? It was done in such a way where I signed an NDA gagging order. We're not supposed to talk about it, but I'm talking about it. I don't care. Now he can come after me if he wants. I've said that before. He's done this to other people. And I think his tactic was to kind of not just silence me, but stop me ever. I don't think he expected me to come back in the way. So what I decided to do was tell people about it and be open about it. And it's all over my LinkedIn. I built a £25 million business and lost it and built it up again. And I think in a funny, paradoxical way, I thank him, because it's made me the person I am today. It's given me even more resilience, and it's enabled me to build a different business and a different life and become a different person. So I wouldn't want to do it in that way again. But I think that's why a lot of my clients engage with me, because they can see I'm being real and authentic. One of their worst fears is probably losing their business. Not many people have done what I've done. Not many people have built a business and bootstrapped it to 25 million and sold it. Effectively, I did sell it. So, I think I'm a good example of whatever's thrown at you. If it's thrown at you for a reason, and sometimes it can be bad, but you can use it for good. I know there's some people out there that think, oh, you're still talking about it. This was 10 years ago, but how can I not talk about it? It's part of my thing. But I do think now I've evolved, especially in the last year or two, I've evolved into kind of like, I want something new now. I don't want this to be my life. It's a chapter of my life.
That's exactly it. It's not the whole story, is it?
No.
It's just an element. And like we touched on earlier, it's a fucking big chapter and it's a great one, but it doesn't have to define you because there's so many more to be written, right? So I want to see your views on the struggles that men go through at the moment. And I know that's quite a blanket statement, but to dive into it a bit more and put it simply, why do you think there's so many men struggling right now?
Because there's a complete misconception that women have it more difficult than men. Without being too controversial, yes, of course, 100% in many aspects of life, women are disadvantaged, and they are, in terms of pay and opportunities and everything else. But a man's general role in life is to provide for people, to have a purpose, to put food on the table and everything else. And I feel as if a man isn't earning a certain number of pounds, then he's got no chance with women. He's got no chance necessarily with any sort of opportunities. So I think men are judged on what they can provide, not what type of men that they are. And I think that is quite a difficult scenario to be in. If you're born into a family that hasn't got much money, you haven't got much opportunity, what chances do you have as a man to succeed? And it's difficult. Whereas I feel as if sometimes a woman can have a family, and that's their role, and it's really, really, really important. But the man goes out to work, can then be disenfranchised from his family because he's working too hard, and I think men are told to be stoic, are told to be strong, are told not to talk about their feelings, and we're human beings. I don't get this kind of male-female thing where it's all right for a woman to talk about their feelings, but not a man. Why is that the case? I think that's a social construct that is just flawed. So I think it's our inability or lack of opportunity to be able to show our emotions. And actually, in many aspects, I found that men are more emotionally intelligent than women in many aspects. There are also some great leaders out there, women leaders, that are much better than men. But I think we're categorized into, unless you've got this certain house, car, job, money, you're effectively useless.
Yeah, it's what I see very frequently is men, it's our worth is put on what you do, and a lot of women's worth is how they look. So if I don't know, I've seen it with my partner and her friends, for example. So I'm similar to you, mate. You don't want to say like all, right? We don't mean all, but in my lived experience and speaking to my partner and her friends, it's, I met a guy. Oh, cool. What's his name? Oh, it's Dave. Oh, what does he do?
Yeah.
Whereas guys, it's, I met a girl. Oh, what's her name? Yeah. Oh, it's Sarah. Oh, have you got any pictures? So it's a very different kind of challenge. And, I don't want to get down the sort of Jordan Peterson-esque route here, but I do agree with a lot of his work. Yeah. Where the pay gap in particular is mainly aimed at C-suite roles. Yeah. Because in most other areas it is equal, because it can't not be. No. And someone once controversially said, well, if that was the case, why would not just hire women for every C-suite role if you're paying them less and what have you? But I know there's so many struggles that they do go through.
But also the demonization of men is got to a level of just ridiculousness. And I think that without men, that all the industrial stuff that goes on, all the buildings, all the fight. I know there are women firemen, I know there are women policemen, I know all that kind of stuff. But when you're in trouble, when you're being attacked by somebody, you want a man to save you. I just think that some of the narrative that we're spun is done to actually deliberately divide us.
Yeah, and I think if it was on the other foot, we'd be cancelled if we said some of the things that.
Right, absolutely.
On LinkedIn, it's celebrated with phrases like mansplaining, manterruption. Manterruption's a new one.
Yeah,
that's
right.
It's when men interrupt women in meetings.
It's actually because they say misogyny is men being unfair on women. It's misandry, women being like that with men. It's exactly the same.
Yeah. So, and people go, but it's different, or you don't get it. No, it's not about that. No. I'm removing the battle, air quote, between the genders. It doesn't have to be this way either.
Yeah.
It's why can't we just celebrate each other a little bit more and not just say all women, all men? Because
of course. And I've been for want of a better term, the victim of being divorced, and I've had two mothers of my children, and I've been on the victim of parental alienation. I think one of the things that is very unfair in this world, and I repeat, there's many unfair things on women that men get the benefit of, but in regards to, like, what's the point in getting married these days? Because if you get divorced, the woman gets most or all of it anyway, for some reason. And the kids as well. The woman can say to the judge or the authorities, actually, he's this, and this, and then the judge goes, right, you can't see your kids for X until you can prove you're not. And for the privilege of not seeing your kid, you've got to pay 60% of your maintenance. I mean, mate, on what grounds is that anyway unfair? Is that anyway fair? Also, I mean, there's no wonder men are so depressed. That really upsets me, because I've seen stories where fathers haven't seen their children haven't seen their fathers for years and years and years, because the woman's just said that's what should happen.
That's the way it is.
Based on no evidence whatsoever.
What I see quite commonly is if a man does challenge anything, it gets labelled as being defensive or as gaslighting or as whatever. And it's like, well, no, you're just saying words. You've got your opinion. Cool. I've also got my opinion. We don't have to get to this clash and this I'm right, you're wrong mindset about things. Can we not have a healthy debate about this? Because the pressures are just different. They are just different. Going back to the emotion piece, I don't mean that women don't want men to speak up because they're afraid that they're going to beat them up or anything. I'm not saying that. But when I have experienced emotion and I've showed it, the girlfriend doesn't know what to do.
Yeah.
And I've seen countless clients that are male that have done that too, where the partners have left them or they shut down even further because they're going, fucking hell, what's wrong with him?
Yeah.
It's a inherent thing built in us, unfortunately. The same way that it is if you put Margot Robbie next to an obese person, most people, just the way that we're wired, is that's more attractive to most people, right? By and large. And I think that it is an age-old conditioning that probably won't ever leave us fully, that people will be fully comfortable with a man crying. But it is getting better. I
think it's getting better, isn't it? And I think that don't get me wrong, I think there are roles that a man should play and a woman should play, but also that I think a good healthy relationship is yes, the man needs to be strong sometimes, but also the woman can be strong for the man as well. It doesn't have to be so black and white, right?
So you have children now?
Yeah. I've got a 23-year-old, a 24-year-old now, and that I don't really see at all, unfortunately. And I've got a beautiful 7-year-old, a beautiful soon-to-be 11-year-old, Chester and Phoenix, that I see every other weekend, every Wednesday, and they're my life. And I've got to say, I'm so grateful. And to talk about life harmony, when I'm with them, I'm with them. If you look at my Instagram, my Facebook, not that it's about that, but you can tell that I love spending time with them. We go bowling, we go camping, we go on zip wires, we do loads of stuff, drawing, painting. But then I've got every other weekend where I can do my thing. So I'm quite fortunate in that regard. But yeah, my kids they're beautiful. I'm very happy about them.
How do you think your upbringing has impacted your approach to fatherhood?
I have to say that I'm a completely different and much better father to my two youngest than I was to my oldest. I think I wasn't mature, ready, capable. I'll talk about my father not being ready back then. I wasn't ready to have Kieran. It was sprung upon me. So I think I learned the hard way. But also learned from my parents and my step-parents about how not to be a parent as well. So I think I never want my kids to feel what I felt. So I think that helps me. And I think now I've matured emotionally, I'm a much better father. So I think I've got better over time, actually. Which is, and my kids, you can tell my kids are, I used to put all my time into my work, and I don't do that as much as that now. So I think it's been a journey, and I think it's good to see that as the kids get older, they go through different phases as well. They become a different person to parent. My 10-year-old, nearly 11-year-old is entering the teenager phase, and he's becoming quite wise and you've got to be quite on your game with these things. They're quite intuitive, and I'm enjoying that. And I was shocked to find out that I've got a sister as well. But being a parent has probably saved me on many aspects in terms of grounding me, making me realise what's important. And I learn so much from my kids about right at the start about being vulnerable, but being open, but being free and being yourself. I think kids are a great example of how to be yourself, but they run around and do stupid things and fart and jump on the sofa. I know there's an extreme, but there's a purity in that, isn't there, with children that I think you can learn so much from.
Yeah, I saw a meme ages ago. It was carry yourself with the same confidence that a 4-year-old wearing a Batman t-shirt has.
Yeah.
And I just think that's just so true. I took my nephew to watch the wrestling last week in Sheffield, and he was just like, just starstruck by everything, and getting involved with him and all the chanting and the booing of the wrestlers and all that, and he just absolutely loved it. And seeing that like childlike fascination in their eyes that you just can't replicate.
No inhibitions, really, no.
Yeah, and because we picked him up, I took him out of school, my brother and I, and he thought he was going to the dentist, and then I turn up, and he loves his Uncle Adam and all that kind of thing, and we're taking you to the wrestling, and he thought he meant we're going back home to watch wrestling,
right?
And he was happy with that, So to take him like, no, we're going to see them in person, is like his mouth couldn't have got any wider, kind of thing, and it is that almost childlike fascination that we do lose as people as we get older. So what would you say the main sort of takeaways you've had from fatherhood around yourself? What have you learned about yourself during this time?
I think patience. I think when your child is being disobedient, naughty, whatever it is, I used to be quite aggressive back, I have to admit. I used to shout at them and that kind of stuff, but I tend to take a pause now, and I do that in my business and my life, and go, and then that little gap, that little stop, and then I literally react. So tell me why you feel it's appropriate to act like that. Or, I'll react completely differently. And in business situations as well, and in partnerships, when someone's being bad or wrong or different or saying rubbish, I just pause a little bit, and then I respond differently. So my ability to respond versus react, they've taught me a lot. The importance of quality time as well. So I used to kind of like be on the laptop, be on the phone and talk to my kids. Now I segment that. If I need to do some work, I say, Daddy's going to be busy for 45 minutes on the Zoom. As soon as that's finished, we're going to do this, and this. So my ability to kind of time manage and segment, I've ported that from my relationship with my children to my business, where I teach my CEOs, instead of trying to do 5 things at the same time, delegate those 3. You do that thing now for 45 minutes. And they tell their team that as well. So I think time management has helped me. Communication, I think, as well. And I think empathy. Empathy is a good one, isn't it? Empathy in personal and in business as well. And I think if you can demonstrate you empathize and understand with somebody, get them on your side, you can get them to do things you want them to do as well. I think so. There's loads of things. For
sure. So discovering that you've got a sister at the age of 47.
Yeah, mate. I mean, God almighty. So I got this random text message on TikTok about 3 weeks ago saying, I don't know how to say this, mate, but I'm your sister. I'm like, what the fuck? So she's seen me on one of my social media talking about my parents and what happened to me. So it's transpired that my mum, I also found out 5 years ago from my foster mum that my foster mum told me that my brother isn't my real brother. So my mum, my dad,
the one that you were in the caravan with, you said,
yeah,
right,
yeah. So I know. So my dad took my mum in pregnant with my brother from another man, And I only found that out 5 years ago. I kept on that for 2 years. I tried to tell my brother 2 or 3 times, but I just couldn't. I couldn't find the right time, the right moment. I told him recently, and he just is not talking to me. So he's blamed. He's in hurt. He's in pain, which was really horrible. But I'm going to let him process that. It's obviously not my fault, but it's a bitter pill for him to swallow, isn't it? His dad wasn't his dad. His mum was that, and I'm his half brother. But then. It transpired that my mum's had 4 or 5 other children, and one of them is Ali, who's my sister, and she's now found out the extent of what she was like. So I put this thing on LinkedIn. It went really, really viral. We've spoken 5 or 6 times now. We was about to meet, and then she pulled back. So I think it's very overwhelming for her. So we're going to take it very, very steady. But she's beautiful. She's inside and out. She's got a lovely soul. And I'm really excited by that. Initially, it was kind of like quite an emotional thing. And I don't know, I'm holding it together now because I'm quite a resilient person. But I think in person, we're both going to break down to realise that I've had a sister all this time. And I've got other brothers and sisters I don't even know. So my mum has just got, and she also told me that my mum's abandoned 2 other children as well. My mum's got this track record of abandoning her own children.
Fuck.
So it's like, it makes me feel better in a way. It wasn't just me, So I went round there to see I tracked her down about 5 years ago, went round there, knocked on the door. She was a shell of a woman. She was like smoking weed and all sorts of stuff. It was just a horrible, she said it wasn't my dad's fault. She just basically said she couldn't be bothered. Didn't ask for my number, didn't hug me, and never seen her since. So that was like, if I ever wanted closure, that was it. So I'm like, mate, I mean, to have a mother like that is like, it's hard to comprehend. But
how did you feel walking away from that?
Almost like a sense of kind of like ambivalence, really, mate. Because it was so long ago. As in, I was 43 when I met her again. I'm 47 now. I was kind of like, the damage has already been done. I guess I went around there just to sort of understand why she did what she did. Even if she was this amazing person, I still think it was kind of like just reaffirmed what a fucking twat she was. Sorry. And I talk about empathy and compassion. It's hard to have empathy and compassion, but I'm forced to have empathy and compassion with someone like that because, like,
there's a line in there.
Yeah. What? It's quite unusual to abandon your children, isn't it?
I often say to people that go through traumatic childhoods, we create empathy and compassion for younger versions of ourselves, and we only create empathy and compassion for them for our healing, because it's not forgiving her.
That's so true, mate.
But it's putting a little bit of ease in there for you. This isn't for her. This isn't for parents that have physically or sexually abused children. Oh, you just have to forgive. No, you're not doing it for them.
Totally right.
It's for your peace of mind and knowing that you are enough and you always were enough, and you didn't need that validation from someone who wasn't capable and who was only a mother by title.
Yeah. No, that's a really good way. I've heard of that before, actually. And the more I think about it with my sister now, it's almost like we've got strength in depth now. I'm not sure I don't know what it's going to be like when I meet her, but that whole forgiveness thing about the whole kind of what happened to my business, my stepmom, what's happened with other relationships now, I don't feel as if I'm very resentful about anyone or anything. And I think when you get to that point, you're doing well. Because even if you deserve to feel resentful, it's not going to serve you to do that, is it?
No.
So you got to think about that, I think.
Yeah, 100%. Like I said, it's all for you in that sense. So, what does being on your A game mean to you?
That's a brilliant question. I think it's being the best version of myself that I can be for my business, my family, myself. It doesn't necessarily mean being the best that day. It means being true to myself, being authentic and being real. I think that's my A game, because sometimes I can be literally amazing at what I do, but not feel right in myself. So I think just that vulnerability and that openness and that authenticity is important to me. But I think it's doing the basics consistently without my exercise, without my diet, without my, the coaching that I have and that kind of stuff, and the people around me. I think you've got to be consistent. So I think it's just being true to yourself, I think.
So what's next for you?
I'm launching a community, a leadership program, more stages, and push myself out of my comfort zone, and just being bigger and better. And I think there's nothing specific, but I want to monetize myself a bit more. Actually, instead of just trading my time for money as a coach and an ED, I want to create this kind of like Chris O'Connell store where you can access different courses and different communities and kind of, fulfill my potential a little bit more in that regard.
Thank you for coming on today and being so open. We're going to put all your details in the show notes, mate. But yeah,
thanks for having me on, mate. You made it great. Thanks a lot for that.
Thanks, buddy.
Cheers.